It all starts with a builder trio called Krudnut, Arzim, and Cosmo. They were in our build team, Build It 1-to-1, when we started, in the summer of 2020 with the first projects North Korea, Antarctica, and Singapore. They didn't like the team or the way things were done, so they left to create their own new team that no one knew at the time. This team was called Earth the Build, and its fundamental philosophy was based on a fundamental axiom: build things in the Earth as best as possible. Earth the Build was a very private team with one of the smallest builder roster histories of any team in the project that's ever existed. And yet, the things they've produced and the way they've changed the culture and the entire project marks them as one of the best and most influential teams that BuildTheEarth has ever had. This revolution was kicked off with their first build project as a team, Monst Mel, the dreamy, fortified French castle island that's inspired fictional works like the Castle of Hogwarts and the city of Minas Tirith. The BuildTheEarth project across all teams refers to this as one of our greatest accomplishments, which is why it made it in our top 10 video a few years ago, and still do to this day. Except for Earth the Build. They've continued to work at improving their craft so much, they no longer think this looks that great. Knowing that, we can only imagine how much more incredible the things they've built have been since. Except no, we're not gonna just imagine. We're going to go over what they've created, many of them being the highest quality Minecraft creations of real life that BuildTheEarth has ever seen. This is everything Earth the Build has ever done. BuildTheEarth really likes battleships, and I think some cruise ships have been built too. But let's look at one of the most unique ones ever made. The Jumbo Kingdom was built in Minecraft by Daniel TNC, and it was designed in the late 70s in Hong Kong to look like a floating ancient Chinese palace. I know my audience is not my age, but if you were around in the mid-2000s for the original Xbox Golden Age, you'd be familiar with a title called Bloodwake. This ship looks a lot like the final boss ship in that game. The Jumbo Kingdom was transiting in the South China Sea in 2022 when it experienced bad weather and capsized. The owners are denying, describing that it has sunk, but after 44 years, it's looking like the end. Also by Daniel TNC, we have the Pagaruyung Palace, which was created in the time of the Pagaruyung Kingdom. Since the kingdom disbanded in 1833, where once this palace held monarchs, it does no more. And like the previous Jumbo, this palace has had a really hard time. It was burned down in a riot in 1804, then recreated, then destroyed by a fire in 1966, then recreated, then destroyed by another fire in 2007, and then recreated. This game of telephone may have produced some inaccuracies between the replica that stands today and the original, but nonetheless, the architectural design is alluring. One might even say tantalizing. Another Daniel TNC creation, member of Earth the Build, is the Charles Bridge in Prague, a stone arch bridge dating back from 1400. The fact that they're still using this 600 years later, like holy crap, cars drive over this thing? Luckily, my alarm was properly answered when investigating. They're undergoing inspections and repairs that are in full, estimated to cost a few $1 million. Checking out the builder Waggy Swagen next, he constructed the Municipal Hall in St. Gilles, Brussels, a work of art whose courtyard was worked on by more than 20 sculptors and artists over a century ago. The building adorning Earth the Build's charming spawn area. I love this one because it has such a quaint cottage feel accompanying that unusual, impending, questioning your own existence kind of awe that Earth the Build projects usually induce. Also built by Waggy Swagen is the Vtifkersch in Vienna. We already saw this in the Alps episode, but it was an Alps gift, gifted by Earth the Build, created by this man, Waggy Swagen. This was the church where the emperor was almost assassinated, but not quite, and so his brother wanted to thank God by building this church. Heinrich von Ferstel, the architect of this, was only 26 at the time. His neo-Gothic plan was so good, most people mistake this for an original Gothic church. This thing looks like it's from the past of another dimension. It's one of my favorites. Here's something we've seen before. Place des Victoires, the Roman equestrian statue of Louis IX in the center, surrounded by incredible French architecture, the heart of French historical culture, and a globally significant location. We've seen this on the France video, But what you may not know is that many Earth the Build roster are French. Earth the Build, for a long time, just used BuildTheEarth France's server, and the two cultures were much of one and the same. And a huge reason BTE France has some of the most mind-blowing structures that we've seen in the project is because of the Earth the Build culture that runs along parallel lines with it. That town center was built by Earth the Build and France team member Garnier, and another built by him would be the most famous opera house in the world, also in Paris, the Garnier. It was created in the 1860s at the behest of Napoleon III. Slavery was ending everywhere. This Napoleon would be deposed soon. Crazy times. This opera house was used as the setting for the world-famous Phantom of the Opera. The interior of this opera house is insane, but we don't have it built in Minecraft yet. Why hasn't anyone built the amazing aircraft carriers yet? Here's an aircraft carrier and several French warships also built by Garnier. I don't know how large this one lands in terms of the largest aircraft carriers in the world, but it's amazing to see it here, floating in a super flat, defying physics as we know it. Okay, we're gonna look at a builder called Crudnut, the original member and one of the founders of Earth the Build. Created by him is the Ping An International Finance Center, the 5th tallest building in the world, built in the Forbidden Land of China, where building from source material online is difficult if not downright impossible, yet this was made with impeccable detail and accuracy. The superstructure has a 5-floor basement. A 5-floor basement! Just to give you an idea of how ridiculous it is. Also, much like the Burj Khalifa, which Crudnut also built, the tallest building in this city block has been subject to roofing attempts. Daredevils climbing skyscrapers illegally, and Malaysian photographer Kiao Wee Long made the entire climb while the building was still unfinished back in 2015. You would imagine this to be a giant moneymaker, but according to sources, almost 30% of the building remained empty and unrented in the second half of 2019, just before COVID and a time seen as a world economic peak. Moving on to historical Chinese architecture as opposed to modern, Crudnut also built the Pavilion of Prince Tang. Look at this shit. This was built in 653 AD, but unfortunately this is just a recreation built in 1989 on the same spot, as it's been destroyed many times throughout history. I don't know why it's on a square of that Vanta black concrete that Minecraft has. Maybe it's a black Minecraft void symbolizing a great architectural marvel whose original work is now no more. This thing was destroyed and reconstructed as soon as 20 years after its original construction. And get ready for this, it's been reconstructed 29 times throughout history. Reasons for their various destructions include fires, sinking into the river, building collapse, damage from various battles, intentional demolition by defenders, and more. Crudnut's also made this crazy Minecraft recreation of the Harold Washington Library in Chicago. These walls are multi-layered, with 4 different layers. At the end of my building career, I started doing 2 layers sometimes, but this is just unfathomable. And the roof, oh my god. A traditional, good old-fashioned American library built at one of the peaks of the American Empire, the 1980s. This monster library cost $175 million. Adjusted for inflation, that's gonna be a crazy sum. That was a lot of money in the 80s. Now, surprisingly, you would think this one to be done by the Frenchman Garnier, but it was done by Crudnut, partnered with the German builder Dasburn and Ding. We covered this construction in the France video and how it endured throughout the last 1,000 years of French history, but safe to say its survival is a miracle, and this immaculate Minecraft construction is another testament to the deep connection between BuildTheEarth France and Earth the Build. Okay, check out this little village in Paro, Bhutan. Ever heard of Bhutan? I haven't, but if you see it on Street View, the buildings look like they're from another world, putting architecture in the modern world to shame. And the builders Crudnut and Mail223 have absolutely taken advantage of this to detail this area like an ice cream covered wonderland in Minecraft. This is called a sacred town with palaces where the royal family resides. Also in this place is Bhutan's tallest building, only 22 meters and created 500 years ago. That is so amazing to me. Areas of interest to a group like Earth the Build would be something like Venice, which we've had a lengthy discussion earlier in the series about its unfortunate potential future. One of the potentially lost wonders of the world would be the Basilica della Salute, which was created by the builder Waymer, surrounded by scattered but substantial progress. It really echoes the nature of Venice as a whole, waves and waves dying in plagues during the Renaissance while the Santa Maria della Salute was still being built. Its exterior features the apostles Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, the classic New Testament Gospels. Speaking of divine judgment, you can't forget the Judicial Court of Paris, this crazy modern building that acts as a global courthouse. One thing, check out this rooftop courtyard. Look at these trees that have the grass texture and all kinds of crazy stuff on them. Making that in Minecraft? Man, it's dedication. That's my favorite part about this. This courthouse processes criminal adjudication in the matters of crimes against humanity, war crimes, crimes committed outside of the territory by French soldiers, corruption, tax evasion, and terrorism. That's quite a resume. But what's the complete opposite of an ultra-modern French courthouse? A somewhat famous Toulouse in the Chinese countryside of Nanjing County. The Tianluokang Toulouse cluster. There is such a small amount of data on these, I don't understand how Yoda, the one who built this, was capable of it. Vlogging videos and architectural research. Everything you see is accurate, nothing made up, no bullshit. Craziest interior I've ever seen. So by now you have a feel for the strength of what Earth the Build does. Create mind-bending structures with rich detail that provides maximum depth of fascination in the explorer or viewer. But by now you've probably noticed the downside as well. By pushing quality to its highest it can possibly go, naturally, very little progress in the Earth is completed. But what if you took the depth of standard for Earth the Build quality and started building as much of your hometown as possible with it? Well, PicoP, with help from Ignore the Beaver, has been working on this area for years, the downtown sector of Montreal, Canada. Almost everything internally within the radius of progress is fully complete, including Street View, and it rivals the size of the 100 buildings I did in Seattle the first year, except the quality is at least 100 times better. Notable locations in this area are things like the Square Phillips Hotel, the St. James Cathedral, the Montreal Marriott Chateau Champlain, and the Farron Five Roses, the headquarters of a Canadian flower brand. Montreal is one of the coolest cities in the world, but the opulence of its downtown sector could never be represented better than by the builders at the front of the quality meta, and I think it's accomplished in this radius of progress spectacularly. Speaking of doing areas as best as possible to show what's possible, PicoP, sounds like a Pokemon. PicoP has also made this row of houses in Dunkirk, France. Dunkirk's port had a huge role to play in World War I and especially World War II. This area was the stage to a last stand of 500,000 Allied troops who were about to be slaughtered, but the German advance stopped for some reason. They found out later it was because half their tanks were out of service and they decided to engage in repair for a few days before pressing on. This gave the Allies the critical time they needed to fortify and evacuate. This moment often being referred to as the Miracle of Dunkirk. With a row of random ordinary houses looking so fascinating and amazing, PicoP has shown here how even the seemingly mundane can look exemplary in the Minecraft Earth. Okay, one last thing from PicoP. If you'll remember way back when in this series, in America Part 2, we checked out some meager progress in Philadelphia, and it indicated that the architecture in this city is amazing. It has incredible potential. Clearly, PicoP saw the same potential and decided to act on it. The city block is far from finished, but what has been finished is jaw-dropping. A strange puzzle or mirage that looks out of place in America with how beautiful it is, but also just strange enough that it wouldn't quite fit in Europe either. A half-breed with its own unique style and influences that truly make it a city of its own. All I can imagine when looking at this is a completed Philadelphia at this level of quality and what that would really look like. We also have a small example of incredible landscape texturing by Mew in Hamilton Park, New York, and Mew has also built the Diamond Gate, the main gate to Koyasan, Japan, rebuilt in 1705. My favorite part is this white box, as if it were a structure loaded in the Matrix, and interplays with the aesthetics of the structure in an interesting way. Next up is Tim, who built this intense and intimidating skyscraper in the equally intimidating Detroit, Michigan, and a work-in-progress city block from Vancouver, BC, made by both Tim and Mew. Another unfinished but absolutely awesome, insane-looking thing here is the Kabuki in Kyoto. This is a 500-year-old Japanese theater, immaculately detailed in Minecraft and being created by the builders Tim and Jewel. It was built in 1620 but heavily rebuilt in the 1920s, reflecting a mixture of styles and influence from the early Edo period as well as the Momoyama period. Something more modern with a crazy awesome courtyard, and I love this whole thing. It's the Europe Shopping Center in Lithuania. Apparently, I have a significant percentage of Lithuanian ancestry. I've never gotten a blood test, and I'm not going to, since these companies apparently send your DNA to every third party and skulking internet lowlifes who will make hamster-human hybrids out of it or whatever they're doing. But this mall was designed to tailor to those who have a more active and fast-paced lifestyle and locals living in the area. They have multiple floors, so many stores, and even a fitness center. I've never seen a modern mall detailed like this in the ETB fashion, but it's refreshing. Congratulations to the builder Crete who made this one. Now let's take a look at Earth2Build's larger group projects where they build entire areas together, like the Build the Earth Avengers or something. Like Monst Mel, they tried a number of events over the years, but motivation was a constant problem and concern. The next most completed area they managed was Eidra City, the French island with astonishing architecture hosting the world-famous Notre Dame Cathedral. If I understand correctly, they finished all of it except for a tiny bit, which BTE France finished when it was transferred over, and they even began on some progress across the river. Historically, this island has been huge. Even in the 4th century AD, the island was home to the fortress of the Roman governor that ruled over the area. That wouldn't last much longer, and a century later, Clovis I built his palace on the island. The Notre Dame Cathedral wouldn't be built on the island until the 12th century, during the time of the Crusades. This area was heavily redesigned in the 1800s, after its narrow streets were killing tons of people from the cholera outbreaks, which leads to the wide street and large squares that inhabit the area today. The completion of this island, which holds some of the most esteemed architectural marvels in the world, is an incredible accomplishment, and I'm glad that we all get to witness it. Another Earth2Build event that saw less progress was San Francisco's Chinatown. They didn't finish it, but what has been done is jaw-dropping. Severely accurate and detailed streets in what is the United States' oldest historical Chinatown community beginning in the 1850s. San Francisco's recent troubles has certainly affected the enclave, and Chinatown in this area is fighting for its survival. And many of the original buildings from the district, like the Tin Hau Temple's original incarnations, did not survive the trip through history. Nonetheless, what has been completed here is amazing and shows the potential of the area. And the last event featured by Earth2Build is this city block of residential buildings with a lovely courtyard in the city of Gdansk, way out in Poland. And that's everything Earth2Build has ever done. If you remember in the Poland episode, what's been completed is immense, and the opportunity for epic architecture is wide, so it doesn't surprise me as a chosen location for Earth2Build to flex their abilities. Nonetheless, the team has struggled with motivation, so completion was only limited to this radius. Understandable given their titanic accomplishments such as Monst Mel look like such a difficult and huge task. Me creating a project that inadvertently led to the creation of these things completely beyond my capacity to even imagine is a pretty amazing feeling, and I have a huge thanks to Earth2Build for taking my enjoyment of seeing mind-blowing things from the four corners of the earth in Minecraft. A huge thanks to our Tier 5 patron, Third Edit Man. I was being mugged by Tony Hawk in an alleyway. Third Edit Man saw and thankfully pulled out his phone to record it. Thank you.